We want to welcome you to our July edition of the Joko, the public Joko. And as we always do when we get started, we want to acknowledge that we do this work here in the Los Angeles basin on what is the unceded Tongva land. Because it's always good to remember that we live in a settler colonial state. Anyone who comes on to the Zoom, we ask that you mute your mic and shut off your video if you're not speaking, and we recommend select your view so that you can see the guest on screen primarily. For Q&A, we ask that you use the chat or the raise hand icon, though I already know ahead of time that for this particular Joko, in the interest of time and respect to our guest's schedule, we're going to skip Q&A at the end of the interview. Again, welcome to the Joko. I am Brother Youssef, a member of the Joko Collective. And we are continuing our series on the 9 areas of people activity and imagining what that's like in the world we want, a more just world. So we've invited in another independent journalist to discuss that with us, creating a revolutionary consciousness with media. Media creates a common frame of reference, a common consciousness for societies, from the rock paintings of the Sahara and the Kalahari to the instantaneous global communications of this digital age. We rely on media mechanisms to select, show, and interpret world events, and to indicate what we must do about those events. When mass media is organized around ruling class interests, the effects are clear. Maintaining neo-colonial power relations as capitalist, imperialist societies groom publics to treat media products as quote unquote only entertainment and quote unquote news. As we continue to build toward a just world, we'll explore how we deploy media to move its audience to critique and, moreover, to challenge status quo thinking and establish a revolutionary consciousness. And to do that, we have invited Akile Anai. Sorry. That was the button I was supposed to push. Akile Anai is a dynamic young woman and a prominent power shaker in the Uhuru movement. She is director of the Department of Agitation and Propaganda of the African People's Socialist Party, guiding a multi-platform media operation that delivers an African internationalist analysis to the issues and events impacting the Black working class in the US and around the world through newsprint, FM, and online radio stations, social media, and book publishing. Akile is also editor of the Burning Spear newspaper. She was featured in Ebony magazine during her 2017 bid for city council in St. Petersburg, Florida, where she ran on a platform of unity through reparations. She leads the new civic organization Communities United through reparations and economic development. She is the co-host of a popular radio show, Good Morning Africa, on St. Petersburg's newest Black community station, Black Power 96, heard Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. at 96.3 on the FM dial. She is currently campaigning against gentrification of the African St. Petersburg community. Welcome, Akile.
Uhuru, thank you, Brother Youssef. I'm very happy to be here and really appreciate Joko Collective for this very dynamic discussion that we're going to have today.
Great.
So, yeah, thank you.
Excellent. Well, we'll jump right in. So we were looking at an earlier interview you did, an interview with James Fauntleroy. And in it, you said you grew up in the African People's Socialist Party, but you didn't officially join until high school or until after high school. So how'd you make that choice?
So, yeah, I think I have to go back a little bit, even before I was, well, not before I was born, but just to say that I have to attribute a lot of this to my dad, who met the Uhuru movement and the African People's Socialist Party when he was 12 years old. And so he had been around the movement, had been a member at different points of time in his life, and a supporter, all of his life at that point. And so as a child, I was able to have, just that understanding that he would gain from the Uhuru movement and the leadership, Chairman Amalia Shatella. I would have sort of a different kind of ideological foundation, I think, than most of us are able to actually have unless we actively seek it. And so I had that kind of informing me as I grew up. And I also grew up in not grew up, but was born 2 days before the city of St. Petersburg, Florida, where I'm based, where I'm located now, erupted in rebellion by the African working class here after the St. Petersburg police had killed an 18-year-old by the name of Tyrone Lewis. So that was October 24th, 1996. And it was, and the battle has been coined the Battle of St. Pete. So it was a very historic period in the Uhuru movement, provided important political leadership to help sum up what that was about. And so that was I was born 2 days before that. And so there's this period, there's the development that I have as a child, through my father. I was at 14 years old, I was, performing at different events that the Uhuru movement would do. I would write poetry and I would sit in the meetings and I would raise questions. And then when I was in high school, I, kind of went off and did my own thing. And then Mike Brown in 2014 was murdered. And these are when things kind of come full circle. So I was in a majority white school at the time. And I just realized that there was like no way out of this, outside of what it was that the Uhuru movement, the African Socialist Party was doing and what it had summed up about the world, what limited understanding I had then. I was like, I have to, become more engaged. So I started more actively volunteering with the Uhuru movement. Actually, in the Department of Agitprop, I was volunteering in Agitprop at that time. And then when I turned 18 and there was like the fork in the road and there was college. And then, there was this opportunity here. And, I chose to just, jump right in. So I joined the party, African People's Socialist Party at that time. So,
right. Interesting. So much you said. I want to comment on, but I'm gonna be disciplined. I do remember that the Battle of St. Petersburg, because it was I actually used to, as a college student, go to the Uhuru House in Oakland on some Sundays, right? And then once I moved to Southern California, moved back to Southern California, I didn't know what had happened. I had wondered, and then when I saw on the news, because that got national coverage, and I thought, oh, I know who those people are. I know what's going on there, and I was really happy to know that the African People's Socialist Party was still active after that gap of a few years of not knowing what happened after the 89 earthquake in the Bay Area. Anyway, I've already said more than I should because I'm supposed to be asking the next question. And it's about that transition though, right? So So that transition started even before, right?
Yeah.
You were coming to the end of high school. But actually making that choice, right? Becoming an official member of the party. What did that mean to you? Making that transition, what did that mean to you?
I really at the time I didn't think I gave it much thought. It was just like this is something that I wanted to do. And it was like the most logical conclusion that I could come to. And, I also had the real benefit of, hearing and, just really studying under the leadership of Chairman Amalia Shatella and, just being able to see the world through African internationalism, which is the theory that informs the party. So really was just like what else would you do? and so and I think but it wasn't like something I did lightly, but again I was 18. I had no idea about the world, even still having some kind of analysis, but it's not something that I treat lightly. Obviously take the being in the African People's Socialist Party, a member and a leader, very, very seriously. And but it's transformed my life, and it's it's like it makes you a better person. You can practice discipline, as we talked about already. And you realize you live for the people, so you have to change who you are and your life, and not like in terms of everything you've learned about who you have to be and all this kind of stuff, because we taught a bunch of horrible stuff, and the media, the primary component of this. So you just get transformed through this process. I was able to even become in agitprop and all the things that was just mentioned. Like I had no idea I was even capable of doing what I'm doing right now. So it was able to unlock even all of this potential, these skills that I didn't even know that I could possess. And I'm able to use them to forward the liberation of our people. So
all right. So I'm gonna ask one more follow-up question. So even in high school you were volunteering in agitprop, as it turned out. Is that sort of your bent or your tendency toward communications, media, the arts, things like that?
Definitely the arts. That was, I think, the thing. Like I said, I had been performing like poetry and stuff like that, singing and monologues. I like the theater, reading, all that kind of stuff. So I definitely think that was more my forte. And so yeah, that's just kind of just where it evolved. And even then I didn't have the understanding that art is ideas. It's propaganda. It is, like a manifestation of a certain, set of beliefs and ideology. I didn't make that connection until,
And if you had chosen college, you might have gone through the, fine arts or performing arts degree.
Yeah, I was trying to do like, I don't know. At the time, I don't know if I really had a passion for college. It's just something that you told you're supposed to do. And like, I didn't get into or didn't even try to apply because also because as African people, we're born into a social system that's built on our oppression and and our exploitation. And so the ideas that come from that society, therefore, just reinforce our position on the bottom as the pedestal. And so it doesn't just inform how the colonizer sees us, but it also informs how we perceive ourselves. And so I didn't even have the confidence to like go to schools like that because it's like, well, it's not even gonna happen. Even though I have so much love and appreciation, a better understanding now and the genius in that everything I look at in terms of culture is our people, like everything that's been stolen and our name scratched off or something like that. But anyway, I didn't really have a passion for college. It was just something I thought I had to do. And so wherever that was going to take me, I'm not really sure.
Well, the thing about it is it's always there. People go to college as 65-year-olds and up. I mean,
Yeah, I'm in school now.
Yeah.
I went back,
Oh, wow. There
yeah,
you
so
go.
I'm not telling anybody don't go to school or something like that. I just,
Well, there are practical things to
yeah,
learn, and there
exactly,
are ideas to beware of. I mean,
exactly, exactly.
that's real, right?
Yeah,
I mean, we need doctors, right? And we need engineers, and
right,
that's where that knowledge is secreted away and made expensive. But anyway, and there are other places to learn it where they won't charge you as much.
right.
But let me get on script and ask the next question. Right? So, and it's really about, when you came into this position as director of agitation and propaganda, when you took over, these media platforms, what was your vision for your work?
Um, I had to really, first of all, internalize what this department meant. What is agitation propaganda? I think it's something I still internalize every day, just the full extent of ideas and their significance in the shaping and reshaping, and
Mhm.
because we're talking about, what do we want media to look like, in this new world that we're ushering in, and having to be able to have the vision that's bigger than, okay, this is what I know how to do, and this is the extent of my knowledge. I have to be able to see beyond that, and to be able to see that our people deserve the best in everything. And, that we have to have the capacity to be able to communicate, to distribute, and reproduce the ideas of the society that we're trying to create. So that's a massive,
Mhm.
just feat to accomplish. And the African People's Socialist Party, has the Burning Spear newspaper, which has been in continuous production since 1968. And that is not, a small thing. To be able
Mhm.
to have this publication in print, in constant print, summing up the world and available in our communities. So that's something that, the party has. And then the books and the pamphlets and all of the pieces of literature and information it's been able to distribute over the years. It's been studied by so many people over the years. And of course, now in the digital age, video and, all of this
Mhm.
other stuff, just how we, communicate these ideas, how we learn them, and how we disseminate them out into the world. That's pretty huge. So it requires a lot of creativity too, because we do have these institutions that are in place, which really allowed for my job to be that much easier, because I had like this blueprint. I didn't have to come in here and try to figure out how to start a newspaper. It was there. I walked into the
Mhm.
process.
Right.
But it began to, like, okay, envision more, greater, and and I think there's still things that we want to be able to accomplish, especially in the world of culture, as it relates. We talked about the arts, and that's what we mean by when we say culture is just all of this expression, and how do we move this into the direction of being a revolutionary cultural form that can inform us about where we have to go, and just inspire that kind of mobilization. So yeah, when I got in, I can't say I understood anything about it, and I even had to figure out that propaganda wasn't a bad word.
Mhm.
That there's
Mhm.
something that we would consider bad propaganda, propaganda weaponized against us. But the propaganda is something that everybody has. Anybody with interests, has their, like their own apparatus. And so
Mhm.
I had to learn all of that stuff too. And luckily I had a really great teacher in the form of the chairman, and many others who were able to just, like, train me in this process. So yeah, I don't know if I gave that answer too much justice, but
No, you
I
gave it more than enough justice to
okay.
me. I don't know if you saw Tasha's comment in the chat, but beautifully stated was what she said. So I would say you were right on with that. And yeah, so then these notions of objectivity then, and the idea of transcending bias, the fundamental parts of liberal theories of journalism, media reporting, etc. By contrast, right, agitation and propaganda, aims to analyze and present content through a specific lens, right, and is being straightforward, right, about that agenda. So is there, from your point of view, so I'm already asking you a subjective question, right? Is there such thing as objectivity, transcending bias? Maybe the best, maybe the idea is managing bias, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was also one of the first things I learned. I read this presentation that the chairman had given in Berkeley, California, and it was subsequently titled "The Social Responsibility of the Media."
Mm-hmm.
And it was talking about how the media has a specific interest and that you can't get around it because the media is how ideas get out into the world. That's just, we mentioned earlier in the introduction to this discussion, media being, viewed as like entertainment and just news reporting. It is trying to teach you about the world and inform what your analysis and interpretation of these things, in it, the events happening within it are. That's what it's doing. And that it's explaining that on behalf of somebody's interest. And you have to know who what those interests are. So there's no such thing as, objectivity. And in fact, this is such a bogus, kind of statement that bourgeois media use. And it also brings to the question, because we see this media that slanders African people, that is used to justify, when these things happen to us, when we're killed, whether we were getting shot by police or whether they were lynching us in the streets, we had some explanation we could find in the newspaper about why it is that we deserve to die. So you have this apparatus that can't be objective. But if we go with that explanation, then it means that the colonizers' understandings and interpretations of the world is real and our reality is not. And so that doesn't work. It doesn't work. We're over here, dying and living under these conditions that are being imposed on us. This explanation that the colonizer has provided does not add up. And so I mean, that just shatters any illusion about any kind of objectivity in the media. And with the Burning Spear newspaper, we say we are biased on the side of the African working class. That's what we write from. That's our point of view. And, we make it clear, we don't pretend, to be some, like you said, transcending bias or something like that. No, we have a specific interest. Our interests are aligned with the African working class to be free, to be self-determining. So that's what we write about. Whereas the bourgeois media has an objective interest. Now, the only thing objective is their interest in informing what it is that they write and put out into the world. And I mean, even when the ruling class will talk badly about another sector of the ruling class, it's still serving an interest, so whether or not Joe Biden's media is talking bad about Trump, it doesn't, but that is informed by interest. It should just be very clear to us. And I think people are more can accept that and see that as a matter of fact today. The way the media it's put out, and people are just totally even rejecting like what they see. They don't even believe it anymore.
Right. That's right. What confidence in mainstream media is probably at an all-time low. Whatever part of the political spectrum in the United States one may be on, right? Probably at an all-time low, or just believing your own media.
Yep.
So in this position, right, what are some of the practical challenges of running an independent media platform, multi-platform, project here?
I think that certainly the challenges are really like concentrated in the digital era. And because it's a platform that you have to navigate, because it's one that we don't control. And so Mark Zuckerberg at any point in time can and has shut down our platforms, the same as any platforms that we're having these discussions on. And so it becomes a question of developing our own capacity, and that's why we have our own newspaper and all, and we've fight to have our own institutions that for self-determination, so we don't have to rely on any of their things. But the fact is that social media is the state as well, so you have to be careful of what you say, it's a tool of surveillance, so they pull, I mean, we see it now with the FBI attacks on our movement and all the source of information they could pull. They got it from social media, they got it from our email, all these things. So it's a tricky type of platform to navigate because you have to be on it, in this period, you have to be on it. And but you have to do it artfully, in a way that matches their algorithms, which change all the time, so it's like this thing that you actively have to keep up with, have to have a skilled, core, set of people that can keep up with, its development, and not do it in a way where we come off gimmicky, where we have to compromise our message. We are, because we're serious and professional revolutionaries intent on being free. We're not entertainers, this isn't a social club, or anything like that. This is the real deal. And so I think those are certainly some of the challenges that I think that our whole movement in terms of the African liberation movement is dealing with. And I just remember, I forgot who said this in our movement, but was saying that, before the FBI used to have to do stakeouts. Right. Now they can just go to Facebook and they don't have to work very hard.
All it takes, right?
Yeah.
That's all. Follow. All they got to do is follow you now. I mean, it's that simple. And everybody's willing to share about everything. So.
Yeah. So.
Is there a different kind of challenge with the radio station? Or does it fall under some of those same kinds of issues, particularly as an internet station?
Yeah, I think well, it's a primarily FM station. It's owned by the African People's Education and Defense Fund, so it's a nonprofit owned radio station. It is non-commercial and it has to follow FCC guidelines. And when the FBI raided our place on July 29th, they took us off air. But I would say that we have more control over that platform. I mean, we have, they have strict guidelines that you have to follow, but as long as you don't break those rules, payola and all that kind of stuff, like if you manage to avoid that, the thing is, that's why we have to be extra careful. So, not necessarily what we put out in terms of its content and what we're saying, but, just being able to do it in a way that does not violate any of their rules, because there are people that are waiting for us to slip up and then hit the button to now, bring these type of forces. So, but I think it's less of a challenge in that regard, but it's there. So.
Yes, and really, I think you've answered the other follow-up question. The fact that the media is expressly revolutionary, right? Heightens that difficulty. Right. So I'll go on to the next question then, and that's the media's international reach. What is the Burning Spear's international reach, and have you established relationships with other revolutionary or progressive radical media outlets?
Yeah, I think that certainly over the years of the party's existence, but especially after the raids happened, we saw a flood of forces, the radical or progressive media entities coming forward, not wanting to be complicit with the FBI attacks and actually putting out this story. And that, also draws the question of objectivity, because when we look at how the state worked with the media to be able to fabricate, this whole story against us, they were the first on the front lines to be able to do that. And so what we saw, the people's media come out and, offered up their platforms and made it their duty to join the fight back by getting this information out there, because they wanted to, put us in an information kind of silo, like, lock us away from everybody else, and even scare people away from us. And it totally had the adverse effect. And as we were mentioning just a moment ago, how the confidence in the mainstream media, what that's resulted in is a lot of people taking it upon themselves to start their own platforms and
Mm-hmm.
to be able to have these kinds of discussions that they won't have, or certainly not honestly. So, so we've definitely built some very important relationships with different media entities and platforms. And in terms of, the African People's Socialist Party exists in Africa, in Europe, in the Caribbean, and throughout the US. So the teachings of the Burning Spear newspaper, we still have to resolve getting it, shipped internationally on a regular basis. But it is accessible, via like PDFs and also on our website and things like that. So, and it also informs like political education within our movement. So, we read the Burning Spear newspaper, we learn about our party and what we're doing through the pages of the Burning Spear newspaper, and as well as just analysis about things happening in the world. So yeah, with the ultimate intent to be as overwhelming as the Negro world was with the movement of Marcus Garvey.
Yes. I do recall seeing a French language option for the Burning Spear. And I don't know if I recall or if I'm making it up, a Spanish language option.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that was it. That was, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, there have been, periods of time where we did like regularly publish a bilingual spear. One half would be, in English and the other half would be in Spanish. What we've, and we have, comrades like I mentioned in Europe that are able to do those kinds of translations. And the 14-point platform, which is what we want, what we believe in the African People's Socialist Party, we feel like that's the fundamental thing, like, especially if we're going out to sell the spear and things like that, we have to know that 14-point platform, be able to just articulate. When somebody asks a question, who are you? We can say, here's a 14-point platform, that's who we are. So we translated that into French, Spanish, Portuguese, German, and Haitian Creole. Right on. So now that's in 5 languages, and we want to add to it.
Yeah. I was going to ask if because I know the party is in South Africa, if it might be in isiZulu or Xhosa yet, or one of the local languages, or Lingala, which I do remember hearing the Lingala show that used to be on the website.
Yes.
Right back in now. I don't understand Lingala, but I just loved that it was there. I understood that, right? The importance of that. So, yes. So what about mainstream outlets? Have you had some access to some mainstream outlets with the content you provide?
Not on a regular basis. They come out because they're looking for their story. And as I mentioned, we just can't be confused. The bourgeois media is not our friends. And they are a function of the state. They are, I remember seeing very just like firsthand when there was an African who was killed, like in this city down the street from me. And we went outside, and the only people that were allowed to cross the police tape, of course, outside of the police, were the media. Only nobody else was allowed to come in there, approach it to make their own kind of investigation and come to their own conclusions about what happened. And what was going on was that they were getting their story straight, so that this would be the thing that comes out in the news in a couple of hours to explain the police's side of things, which is the side. That is the explanation. So, it hasn't, I will say, let me say this. There have been mainstream media outlets that have covered this campaign. Most of them unfavorable, and all in support of the U.S. government attacks on the movement. And even when they come out to report like positive, these incredible things that we're doing in the community, transforming the community, they do this thing where they go, this organization that built a basketball court for the Black community, tied to man accused of being a Russian agent. It's to like put this smear on it to even undermine what it is that it's saying it wants to talk about. So, and yeah, so it's never generally in our interest, but I just want to make this point. There was somebody, Tucker Carlson on Fox News, very, very popular commentator on Fox, and he got fired just 2 days after he mentioned our movement and condemned the US government for attacking the Uhuru movement. And there's no coincidence in the world. I mean, he gets fired after he plays a speech by the chairman, on Fox for everybody to see, and criticizes Joe Biden and the Department of Justice, and then he's fired. So if they are so bold to condemn, this system and what it's doing, even on the basis of the democratic principles they say they believe in, then you could end up like Carlson and lose your job. So anyway,
that's key point. Because this other question I have, bourgeois media, does it matter if the bourgeois media is Black bourgeois media? Have you what have relations been like with other Black independent media outlets, or maybe not so independent media outlets, but Black?
Yeah. I can't, it's really funny because when we say like, Black bourgeois, petty bourgeois, like media, and normally those are like controlled by like different organizations or even like the Democratic Party. And so I don't think, we haven't seen a lot of the petty bourgeoisie period, making any kind of acknowledgement or condemning the system, and it's of no surprise. There have been, several forces who have come out, and took a good stance around this, but most of it has been independent, journalists. And I don't know if all of them would characterize themselves as journalists, but certainly these platforms where it allows us to have these kinds of discussions, that has been, like I said, the people's media. That's what's come out, and among those being Africans as well. We mentioned Jay Buffont earlier on in the show. So different forces like that, and we also steady trying to reach, because we know a lot of the independent Black-owned media it doesn't have the same kind of access to resources as the major conglomerate so we have to do our work to make sure we reach them, and however that may however we have to do that. So anyway, that's just something that we're constantly engaged in, but we have, just like I said, received tremendous support from what will be characterized as alternative contending media.
Okay. Yes. So we're going to be winding it up soon. We want to jump back to 2017 and you running for office.
Yes.
So what were some of the highlights of that for you, running for city council?
So many highlights. Wow, I don't even know where to begin. That was such an incredible period, and we were the first in the country to put reparations on the ballot. People could go out and vote for reparations, and it created quite the stir. And it was so mobilizing for Africans in the city. It's a majority white city, but the African community has a really profound history here, including, the chairman's history, growing up in the city, and Jomo, and being in SNCC and tearing this mural down that hung in city. I mean, just profound history. So we were able to just tap into that. And we had just an incredible campaign, volunteer. I mean, this was a grassroots campaign. It didn't have the same amount of resources that these big money candidates had, but we had the best team, volunteers coming, even coming in from out of town because they wanted to be a part of this history that was in the making. And we didn't win, but what we did was so much greater in terms of, winning this question around things like reparations, being able to, to really draw out this contradiction, gentrification, police containment, Black community needs economic development. And look at these politicians just sitting on their hands, not doing anything. And look at these Black politicians selling out the interest of the Black community. I mean, we were just able to put it all on full display. That we had, they tried to lock us out of debates. They had a debate at the Hilton Hotel, and they couldn't handle the people. They couldn't handle real discussion. And so they
Mm-hmm.
called the police. They had 28 cop cars deep, coming out there to deal with us. And it was an election they've never seen before.
Right.
It was so impactful that Obama, he was president at this time. Or was he president? No. Was he president?
Well, 2017, that was Trump's first year, but the campaign.
Right. But he came out of retirement, I guess.
Yeah. He was just fresh out of office, right?
Yes, yes. And he came out and he endorsed our opponents. He endorsed our opponents to be able to like crush this movement and just profound, a unity that we won with this question of reparations. He wanted to crush it. And we had Jesse Neville, who was a white man, who again, it's a majority white city, but he ran clearly under the leadership of the Black community with this question of reparations. So he took it out to white people, and there were white people that came up and would say, we didn't even know about reparations before we met you guys' campaign. And even if they didn't agree with it, the fact is they had to have a conversation about it. Then in 2020, we would see all these presidential hopefuls now debating the question of reparations. So they called us lunatic fringe. They said we couldn't win talking about reparations. They even indicted our movement. The U.S. government indicted our movement. And part of the basis is because we ran for office on a platform of reparations. They said Russia made us do it. That's what they're saying. Right. So these platforms, this campaign has been so impactful that it has ramifications even for today.
That's right.
Yeah. So.
Which really leads to the next question. Any plans of possibly running again?
That's a possibility. It's always a possibility. And, and I think that too, we can even see that possibility happening in different places, not me being in different places running for office, but to see this movement and to see the African liberation movement period really seize the electoral arena as a, serious form of struggle, not like the same, petty bourgeois, the Black sellouts, that get in office, but, and it really challenging them too, because when we come in there, it's like, well, who the hell are you? Because you sound like them. So I think that we can increasingly too see that strategy utilized more, but it's definitely possible. Just depends on where we are at that period of time.
Are you using any electoral strategies in the struggle to halt gentrification?
At this moment, I think most of our work is just concentrated in organizing around these questions and having forums and even town halls and coming to meetings to be able to explain what's happening, to expose this, and doing demonstrations and things like that, teach-ins, that kind of stuff. Right now we don't have, I have to that's not completely the case, because with the Black is Back Coalition for Social Justice, Peace, and Reparations, there are elected officials. There are people who run for office on the national Black political agenda for self-determination, for different types of seats and in different places. So it's certainly a strategy that's being utilized, and one that we continue to. And like I mentioned about our campaigns, we took that question on heavy. The whole thing is so people want to tell us it ain't real, and we were able to, just prove that. But
gentrification, it's a global issue. Working class communities, neighborhoods globally. 2017, I had the privilege of being in Cape Town, and we were in this lovely, just incredible neighborhood. And I remember our guide saying, and yes, it's now under threat of gentrification, right? You can see why, right? Because it's such a nice neighborhood. But it's like, okay, so these people that have been here for generations upon generations right now are going to have to struggle to keep their homes, right? And so, it is definitely a global thing, working class communities internationally, right? Facing this type of thing. We're at the end, right? So we have a question, our final question, and you have answered it. but it's worth repeating, right? So the whole point of this, when we started this, going through the 9 areas of people activity and then breaking those down, right? With the idea of what is the world we're trying to build, right? What is the world we want? This just world, this world in balance, right? Where we are living in balance with the planet, not heating it up or cooling it down too much, right? Or all these, these climate extremes. So this world, right? What's the role of media in that world and on the way to that world? Or maybe put them the other way, right? On the way to that world. And then once we get there, though, then what's the role of media in that world we want?
Yeah, I really appreciate that that last point, because something that the chairman really expresses, and that's why we have all these institutions today. That's why we do what we do today, because we have to develop the capacity to be self-governing, and that it's not a process you wait on where okay, freedom's here and now you just know what to do. You are actively involved in the process. While you are working to transform the world, you are literally like informing what that world is going to look like, and you are already preparing for it. So I think that that's just a really important question. It's not necessarily just what will it look like when the world has changed, but how will our apparatus for communicating ideas, information, education, how will that look now, getting us towards freedom? And this is the thing that we have to really internalize, whether you call yourself a journalist, a writer, an artist, to be able to take responsibility for the revolution, take responsibility for the freedom of our people and for the freedom of the planet, and to make that to have that reflected in the work that it is that we put out. That's our responsibility, and we cannot be reckless with that, because ideas are so important. And because at the end of the day, everybody has a worldview. Even if you can't articulate it, you have one. And that worldview is going to be expressed in the things that come out. So we have to, use the tools at our command and develop new tools to be able to articulate this world that we're talking about, that is void of this colonial exploitation, oppression, war, plunder, of the world's resources, and, just requiring the absolute devastating and horrendous kind of conditions that majority of the people on the planet experience, that's rooted in the whole history and legacy of slavery and colonialism of African people. So this is something that we have a responsibility to take on today, as in terms of being able to shape what tomorrow looks like. And when we're free, and even in the process towards freedom, what we see is the genius of the African working class unleashed. When, like I mentioned, when I joined the party, I didn't even know what I was capable of. And I'm still learning what I'm capable of. And it's not something I would have ever known if I just allowed for this current system's explanation of the world to be the thing that told me who I am and told me this is what I have to do. So we see the creativity unleashed from the African working class, this creativity that normally goes to benefit somebody else, to somebody else's community, is lining somebody else's pockets. Now it's being turned back over to us, and the possibilities are endless. And, I think that's something that's so exciting, because we see what we're able to create under the conditions of colonialism as a consequence of resisting colonialism. We can see that. So when we're free, it's gonna be off the charts. It's gonna be beautiful. And but yeah, so that's what I could say.
Amen. That's all I got to say. And that brings us to 5:51. I know you got to get on the road, so we want to thank you. That was just a wonderful conversation. Thank you, Akile.
No problem. Thank you.
Really
yes.
Awesome.
Yes, I really appreciate being able to be on this platform. It's an honor to have this discussion, and I look forward to further discussions and those that we may have with other members of this movement.
Yes.
But just very powerful, and the work that you're doing, as well as contributing to
you.
The world, that we're saying we're creating. So
yes, well, we hope to have you back very, very soon. specifically for an update, right, on the Hands Off Uhuru campaign and the media campaign, right, as far as that goes, right? So actually quite soon, but I think you'll see the email if you haven't already. Right?
Okay.
So that's it. We will go to our last slide, like protocol, and listen to some good music and say, oh, well, maybe we aren't listening to good music. It's set up to go, right? So that's okay. But folks, we will, again, Akile, thank you. And folks, if you are watching on YouTube, thank you. Don't forget to like, don't forget to share, don't forget to subscribe to the Joko Collective channel. Uhuru is freedom. Asante Sana, comrades.